My name is Robin. Most of you know me. I'm the executive director at Simba. We are the Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance. We'll talk about it a little more in a second, but we are a nonprofit dedicated to helping Eastern Washington small businesses and entrepreneurs and educating the community as well about why you need to support local. Travel with these signs. One of the signs got me today. We put on different trainings on different topics. We've had 3 this week, which is why I look so old and tired today. Uh, Saturday, we presented for the Spokane Filmworkers about starting an LLC. I did not prepare as well for this as I did for that because I did write a soliloquy about LLCs and Reddit. So, if you are interested in me writing a sad Shakespeare-themed poem for your organization, I am your girl. Tuesday, we had an event for people interested in working on food trucks. So we kind of cover everything. And then today, gig workers, I spent a lot of time with some of you, tons of time with some of you doing ridiculous things. And we had this opportunity to apply for this grant to provide gig worker outreach. But we have resources to do things every year. On the back table before you leave, or even while I'm talking, because Brandon is not catching you, just maybe duck in front, like crawl on the ground in front of the camera. Um, there's a ton of resources. One, take them because otherwise Alexis and I have to haul them back to our office. But two, there are really important things here. The most important one, I honestly think, is this pink sheet that tells you all kinds of things that Simba can do to help your business. Some of you have used our services in this room already. I will be soliciting reviews in the future. But literally on the backside is a QR code that goes to our sign up sheet to get booked with one of our staff. We are in the process of making some choices and adding another staff member, hopefully this week, because I'm definitely working more hours than I need to, as is Alexis. We also have a very part-time staffer that some of you know, Megan Lindell, who does data quality for us. She's leaving to go to graduate school, which is dumb. And we have an intern who has been on a little break between finals and today until today. So he is going to be loaded up with work as well. So we're hoping to add to our team very, very soon. Some of our board members are passionate about the arts. Our board president is actually a filmmaker, Juan Moss, who's involved in local theater, local film, local media, fill in the blank. So we've got a lot of connections to this space in this community. So we're just really excited to be able to offer this. But pick one of these up. The other things that might be relevant specifically to the people here who are gig workers, and a lot of you have day jobs because that's kind of definition for gig worker. The independent contractor guide is both if you are hiring an independent contractor, but it's really all your rights as an independent contractor. So every time you sign a contract, verbally or otherwise, to work for someone else, all of your rights are in this guide in Washington State. Your rights as a worker, things you need to know in your day job, paid sick leave, getting paid overtime, all those good things as an employee. And I know a lot of you are employees. My favorite one and the sad one that I hand out to everyone in break dreams, if your family members work for you, if your family members work for you and you have an LLC or you're a sole proprietor or fill in the blank, and they are not an owner of your business, you have to pay them. You have to have minor work permits. You have to do a bunch of other things. You can't just make your child show up and haul your stuff to a farmer's market if you're an artist. So, your kids are very young. But L&I cares about this. Unfortunately, fortunately, people for L&I work all across the state. So I know last year there were a few people who kind of got dinged at markets because they'd have a child helping set up a table or carrying things that maybe was too young and couldn't be a worker, or was someone who was old enough, but they didn't have a minor work permit and they weren't an owner and they got dinged for that. And if you don't pay someone appropriately, it's double the amount you had to pay them plus interest. So please watch out for that. There's a one pager about whether you're an independent contractor or covered worker, whether your employer should be treating you as an employee. Washington's very specific. The business essentials guide, it has links to all kinds of important things. You're all small business owners as gig workers. We're going to get your gig right today. I got to work on some better titles in the future. But there's just a bunch of links on where you need to find the information here. And then the last one about trademark and wordmark registrations we'll talk about during the presentation. Feel free, because we're small, to ask questions at any time. Raise your hand. To get them on sound, I might repeat your question back because I'm mic'd. So that way for the recording, because we'll put it on our social media, our YouTube, excuse me, so other people can see who did not attend. So it would help if I turned this on. Gig worker is all of you. It's a person who does temporary or freelance work, especially an independent contractor engaged on a formal or informal or on-demand basis. So I know some of you are performers, some of you are dancers, some of you have a day job and also work in theater, fill in the blank. Generally part-time, maybe more than part-time for some of you, looking at the vertical elementers. I don't know how we describe you. Uh, I'll work on that. But it's a way to earn supplementary income, or maybe you're doing multiple gig type things to earn all of your income. So really it's so many people. And I think a lot of people think gig workers are just people who are delivery drivers, which is also valid. Or people who are fill in the blank, but you can be a gig worker as a temporary assistant. Like if you're a virtual assistant, like the woman who runs Vested, her side gig job is to be a temporary personal assistant for people on a contract basis as needed. So um, gig workers make up a massive part of our economy, but you are literally all small business owners, whether you realize it or not. So again, we're the Spokane Metro Independent Metro Business Alliance. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We do all kinds of cool things. The one thing that I didn't mention is we run the Live Local directory. It is a free directory and marketplace for independently owned Eastern Washington businesses. So like all the way to the Cascades, north to Canada, south to Oregon, east to Idaho. You can list your business on there. You can post events. You can offer deals and discounts. Our goal for 2025 is to make it a standalone e-commerce platform for independent Eastern Washington businesses where you could sell gift cards, paintings, fill in the blank. We're working on that. That's a massive undertaking that costs a lot of money. But everyone who's shopped on Etsy in recent years knows that Etsy is full of drop shippers and people stealing arts and doing things. So to make it a place where, at least for Eastern Washington, you can literally know you're buying things that are locally made. So we're able to provide this today, including the incredible catering, and I will encourage you to take some food home. We do have foil and things in the space. I understand that the scones and the breakfast egg situation will freeze really lovely. I don't know if bacon freezes, but you can eat that in the car. So definitely take some with you. So the Washington State Micro Enterprise Association, I always get that one wrong, WSMA, funded a grant for us to do gig worker specific for this event, and some one-on-one or small group if you want help on any of these other topics or anything else. If you want help with one of the applications we're going to talk about today, myself or another staffer can meet with you on your own time. We can meet with you on Zoom. We do request you charge your devices, not looking at anyone in this room whose device always gets uncharged in the middle of every conversation. But able to meet with you on a variety of these topics and other things as well. It's been twice, yes. And we're also able throughout the year through several other contracts and grants to provide these services, always at no cost to you. So it's a pretty good gig, all puns intended. So here's where we're going today. Some of the photos are stock photos that are available in the public domain because we're not stealing media here and violating copyright laws. But we're going to talk about licensing and business structures, and licensing is going to break all of your hearts if you don't have a business license. We're going to talk about DBAs, trade names, and stage names, and how to protect your identity out in the wild, or at least in Washington. My favorite part, honestly, is contract review skills. My former life is in the legal field. And I think there's a lot of gatekeeping of information, usually with high cost barriers for not a lot of good reason. But we're going to talk about things to look for in a contract if you're performing, if you're getting a vendor space, if you're fill in the blank. So some things to look for, things you should be aware of to make sure you're protecting yourselves. Bookkeeping and tax deductions, which is my favorite. And I learned some additional ones at the event we were at last week from Amber Jasmine, who also presented with us, who's our accountant. So I've got some good ones for folks in the space. If you have specific questions, we can work through that. And then Alexis McLaughlin, my colleague, is going to talk about marketing and social media for business, particularly making sure that you are focusing on ways, if you're a gig worker, if you're a performer, if you're a painter, if you're a fill in the blank, people know how to hire you. People know what it costs. People know your availability. There's so many people who are like, oh, I'm a fill in the blank, but there's no way to contact them. Or it's an email that nobody checks, or it's a etc., or no one can see your work. So making sure that you are putting the right things out in the wild. And Alexis does great one-on-one trainings, website evaluations, assistance, logos, fill in the blank. So people know how to get a hold of you so you can get hired. So let's talk about licensing and business structures. How many people in this room have a business license? Okay. Do you need a business license as someone working in the field you are? Possibly. I really should say probably. Sometimes at these events, I say yes. If you own a brick and mortar retail store, if you are a caterer, if you're a film, like it's always yes. But here's why you might need one. Your business address, which might be your home, gig worker, it's usually your home, is in the city of Spokane or the city of Spokane Valley. Have to have a business license. If you are doing business using anything other than your full legal name, if you are advertising your services in anything other than your full legal name, which I know a lot of your stage names and performer names, you have to have a business license. If you're required to collect sales tax, which is some of you, but not all of you. So if you're selling goods, if you're selling stickers, if you're selling t-shirts, if you're selling classes, that's a service, selling services, yes. If you're just performing, you don't necessarily need to collect sales tax, but there's sales tax on the tickets for the performance. But you as the performer don't have to collect sales tax. And if you make $12,000 or more in gross income annually, these are ors, not ands. If any one of these applies, legally you have to have a business license. You may not have one, you may never get caught, but if you do get caught, here's what happens. You get fined massively. They review your financial records and they attribute all the months of you not having a business license to as if your quarter of making the most income is the income you make all the time. And then you have to disprove it. So we'll also talk about why you should do bookkeeping as well. So what does doing business actually mean? We all think about going to a store and buying something, buying coffee, fill in the blank, offering aerial classes. Yeah, that's doing business. But if you're not sure if you're doing business, there is a space on the Washington Department of Revenue's website, and this PowerPoint has live links, so I can email these slides out to you after the fact. So if you click there, you can do a little test of, do I need a business license? You'll say what kind of business I run, where my business is, where I work, and the Department of Revenue will tell you. And as I said, trust me, you probably need one. So if you do need one, you get it through the Washington State Department of Revenue, the DOR. You're also going to file and pay state business taxes there, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And if you're in Spokane, oops. Anyone recognize this person? They look a little different today. So what is doing business? Business includes all activities, all occupations, trades, pursuits, which I think fits with gig workers, professions, and matters located or engaging within the city. This is for Spokane. City of Spokane to earn money, to benefit other people, or to provide you some kind of personal advantage, even if you're not making a ton of money, even if you have a day job. So if you're within the city of Spokane limits doing any of those things, which everyone in the room is, the city of Spokane believes you need a business license. Again, are they going to find out? Not necessarily. Do you want to risk it? Probably no. Oops. Technically, you must have a business license before you start doing business. I have no reporting requirements at this nonprofit, so I'm not going to be like, well, these 4 people didn't raise their hands, and I'm calling the city. Absolutely not. No reporting requirements. You must pay for and renew your business license generally annually. I used to say annually until we did a training for kind of retail businesses in Colfax. And I learned in Colfax, Washington, and 4 other cities within the state, you don't have to renew your business license annually. That's the only places in the state where you don't. I got a question. It threw me for a loop. I've been doing small business work for like 20 years. I know I look so much younger than that, but it is one of like random spaces where you just do it once. Spokane is not one of them. Everyone who's had a business license says you have to do it every year. If you have a workspace where you allow the public to come in, so like the Guardian, for example, your business license must be displayed in a conspicuous place where people can see it. So somewhere in the lobby, somewhere, it doesn't have to be a big, large printed version of it that's highlighted with lights or anything, but somewhere that people can see it. And by people can see it, any of your employees or contractors, but also the general public. And you need to have your current one posted. So when it expires, take it down. So now that I told you you probably need to have a business license, let's talk about why maybe you want to be an LLC as well. So how many of you have an LLC right now? Okay. So I'm assuming the rest of you are sole proprietors if you're a gig worker, whether you realize it or not. So sole proprietors is the easiest type of business to set up because you literally have to do nothing and or get a business license because I already told you you have to have a business license. It provides no protections for your personal assets. So if you are a burlesque dancer by chance and one of your pasties and tassels flies off and smacks someone in the eye and they sue you for that, your personal assets are at risk because you don't have any protections as a sole proprietor. You can have just one business owner. Sole is in the title, but the number of people who tell me, oh, my wife and I own a sole proprietorship, you don't. One of you owns it. The other one is an employee, and you need to be paying them. It's not a great structure if you're hiring employees because generally as a sole proprietor, you're just using your social security number, which means if you're hiring employees or contractors, you're issuing W-2s or 1099s, that employer identification is going to be your social. So the less you can put that out in the wild, the better. You can get an EIN, which is basically like a business social security number, as a sole proprietor, but you probably don't want to. The benefit is you file an individual, not a business tax return. So it's easy. Any of your business expenses are going to go on your Schedule C. And we'll talk about all the kinds of things you can write off coming up. But it's easy, but it's risky. A lot of people do it. I don't love it. And if you want to have a further meeting with me or one of our staffers about why, happy to talk you through what that looks like. A limited liability company is barely harder than an LLC. It takes just a little bit more time and effort, and it provides, if you keep your financial records clean, complete protection for your personal assets. Some of you own homes, some of you own very valuable cats, some of you have art that you don't want people to take, or you will own a home, or you will have a retirement account, or fill in the blank things that you don't want people to have access to, a bank account. So the LLC will provide complete protection of your personal assets if appropriate financial record keeping is done. And the other if that I should put on here is if you don't intentionally cause someone harm. So you don't swing a lira that weighs, I don't know, 15 pounds and is made of steel at somebody's face. You're not protected for doing that. It's pretty easy to set up. It requires a bit more than just a business name and a business license, but one extra step. You can have more than one business owner at an LLC, which is lovely. An LLC can own another LLC if you want to have a bunch of holding companies, which is a structure you should talk to a lawyer about. Probably not there yet. You do have to have this employment identification number, EIN, which is again that business tax ID. That is free to apply for. There's a slide coming up. Maybe I took it out. If you need to apply for one, let me know and I'll send you the link to the space to go, because if you Google get a tax ID from the IRS, the first 5 that come up are people who want to pay you to do it between $300 and $500. It takes 10 minutes and it's free. And then a few of them are scammers who want your social security number. So do not just Google it, just use the link. You're still gonna, for a solely owned LLC, if it's just you or maybe you and your spouse, you're still gonna file just an individual tax return. So there's no additional taxes. You don't have to file a corporate tax return. You don't have to do separate things. You're just going to file the one tax return. And so it's pretty easy. You could choose to file a corporate tax return if you're making a ton of money as a gig worker and choose to become an S Corp. If you're doing that, if you're making that kind of money, you're having an accountant take care of that for you. But generally, it's not much harder to run the business. And there's a new thing though, and I don't know if some of you in the room have done it yet. You have to complete an annual BOI filing if you own an LLC, a formal partnership, a corporation, a land trust, a fill in the blank, everything but a nonprofit or a sole proprietorship. We've been calling them the oh boy filings because I like a pun. That one wasn't mine, but there's more of mine to come. How do you do that? Oh, it's coming up. Okay. But thank you. So you have to renew your entity structure if you're an LLC, for example, corporation, fill in the blank, every year with the Secretary of State, regardless of where you live. If you fail to file on time to renew, your LLC is administratively dissolved. They say it just doesn't exist. You may still think you're an LLC, but if someone were to sue you during that time period, because really we're just protecting you from liability from someone else, from an accident, your personal assets are at risk because you haven't renewed the entity structure. It's $200 the first time to file for your LLC. That is a tax write-off, which is incredible. And every year it's $70 after that. It just got raised to $70 at the start of the year. It's normally $60. So I finally had to update slides and my brain to not say 60 bucks. But every formal structure, whether you're a nonprofit, a corporation, fill in the blank, you have to do it every year. The other problem is if you're late, it's no longer $70. It's $70 plus the initial fee, so it's between $270 and $300 depending on how long you wait. So don't wait. Get it done right away, and you can do it for almost every structure, all the structures that would apply to you guys. Online, there's a few weird ones that you can't. Certain kinds of nonprofits can't renew online. General nonprofits can, so you're okay. But make sure you get that done. Sole proprietorships don't need to renew anything. But again, you might not want to be one because nothing is protected. You would have to renew your business license if you're not in Colfax and 4 other Western Washington areas that I would be surprised if you could earn money there. So some other lovelies who are in the room. So let's say you decide you want to start an LLC. How do you do it? You choose a business name and a type of business. By type of business, I mean, what kind of work are you doing? What is the nature of your business? Entertainment, artist, singer, fill in the blank. Your business name has to include LLC, all capitals, LLC, all capitals with the periods, or limited liability company, but you don't have to use that name in the wild. You don't have to be Madeline McCann Singer LLC in the wild. You can just be Madeline McCann. Madeline McNeil. Madeline McCann is a child that was kidnapped. Someone needs more coffee. But have your name in advance. Excuse me. This will be great for the playback of the video. You're going to form your LLC with the Washington Secretary of State, not the same place as you're getting your business license, because why would it be easy? And truly, there's like a Washington State small business guide, and someone said, oh, just print those out and hand them out. They're trash. I'm sorry. I have raised it with the person who does it. I didn't say it was trash. I said it's not helpful because it doesn't tell you like after you do this, do this, do this. So ideally, once we hire another staffer in July, we're going to make a Simba small business guide with links and places to go and let you know what you need. So hopefully that's coming. We'll release it into the wild in Eastern Washington because truly nothing is clear. You're going to get your EIN, that tax ID number, from the IRS website only. You can do things in this order. You're going to apply for your business license. If you already have a business license as a sole proprietor and you want to switch to an LLC, have a meeting with one of us and we can walk you through. It's a pretty easy switch to change that over. Please do.
If I have an LLC, business license and LLC are different. Do you need both?
Yes. You cannot have an LLC and earn income without having a business license.
Okay. I applied for an LLC. I don't remember applying for a business license. So do I have a business license?
I don't know the answer to that, but we can look.
Okay.
And I can show you where to look it up. And if you need help with that, we can walk you through. I created a staff handout for setting up business licenses. And it does involve Taylor Swift as examples. So, and it has Travis Kelce in there. So if they break up, I'm going to have to make a new one. I'm working on one for Jay-Z and Beyonce just in case, because they're never going to break up. But again, two different places. And you're right. It doesn't make sense. Why would I not get everything from a Washington State agency in the same place? You can't. And they don't tell you to go here next. And then open a business bank account. And we are grateful to have Sarah Damon, thank you, in the room from Spokane Media Federal Credit Union. And I wasn't sure if she was going to make it, so I'll talk about her org a little bit later, and I'll have her talk about her org too. But having a business bank account is going to open up opportunities for you. Importantly, it will allow you to track your income and expenses for any of your businesses, even if you have multiple kind of gigs that you do. If you're an aerialist and a burlesque dancer and a stilt performer and you write scripts and you sing, I'm sure there's someone in town who does all of those things. I don't know that person, but there's someone out there doing those things. It allows you to track your income and expenses. Having a relationship with a bank allows you to apply for funding easier. And we'll talk about hierarchies of banks you might want to consider working with because it's easier to lend for some of them. It also, if you're applying for a grant or loan, I usually come here and tell people there's no grants for-profit businesses because there are really so few. But for people in creative industries, there are. And you need to be able to show your income and expenses for those generally in the applications. And if you have everything in one place, it makes it a lot easier. Even if you're a sole proprietor, you should have a business bank account. And yes.
You can finish my
No, ask your question.
You might have already kind of answered it.
Okay.
But okay, so you're saying, so when you file like what kind of business you are, if you're doing multiple things like I perform, but also maybe I provide a service of like selling and repairing costuming.
Yes.
Do you put two things in there or just kind of blanket it as one?
Good question.
Two separate.
So I'm going to repeat your question just for the recording. And so the question was, what if I do multiple things? I perform and I also sew and repair and make costumes and kind of support other people in the same artistic industry that I'm in. For the LLC, you can put entertainment generally. For the business license, you will choose all the categories. The other beautiful backup LLC one that I recommend people use is any lawful business is the choice. So that way, if you completely pivoted away from performance just to costume design, for example, you wouldn't have to go and change your structure in any way. So I love any lawful purpose if you're doing multiple things, which is really nice. And then BOI, so this oh boy filing. If you started your LLC in 2024, I have to think about what year it is. You have 90 days from the day your LLC is in existence with the Secretary of State to file your BOI, or you may face large financial penalties of up to $500 a day. If your LLC started prior to January 1, 2024, you have until January 1, 2025 to make your BOI filing. I have some slides coming up about BOI so we can talk about it more. I have a great guide that we created that I can send to you that shows you exactly how to do it. It takes about 10 minutes. Easier to do on a charged laptop. Sorry, Ashley. Because you have to upload photo IDs of everyone who owns your business. But that is a new requirement. It's a federal requirement. We're finally into the space where people who started businesses maybe January 1 of this year are past 90 days. It's unclear if they're going to levy those fines at $500 a day, but it says $500 a day on the federal website. So I wouldn't mess with it. And you'll have to do it every year. The thing I hate about it, which we'll talk about in a minute, is it doesn't give you like an email verification that you did it. You just have to screenshot it to show. It makes me insane. Because I definitely did it the start of the year. I will tell this story about BOIs because I think the next ones are coming up. But I sent an email out in December saying this BOI filing is coming to everyone who was on our listserv. And someone said, why does Simba want to make me do this? Why do you want my personal information, my photos of my IDs? I'm like, you didn't read this message because I definitely didn't say that. And I work at a nonprofit. I'm doing a presentation on a Saturday morning. If I had that kind of power, I would not be here. Not that I don't love you all, but it's I was like, please read closer. So if you want to start an LLC, or if you already have an LLC, you have formed it with the Washington State Secretary of State. Do it before you apply for your business license for that LLC. Again, if you have another structure, you're sole proprietor, you want to switch, we can talk about, there's a very easy way to switch that over. Again, it's sos.wa.gov, save us. You can do it by mail. I don't know why you would. Other than we work with a lot of immigrant populations, the applications are available in multiple languages. So if you need it in another language or someone you know needs it in another language, you can do it on paper. It takes 3 to 4 weeks on paper. It's 2 to 3 business days online. So it's very fast. Again, business license after, or transfer your business license after. It's $200, $70 each time. And then as soon as that LLC hits, your personal assets are protected, so long as you're keeping your personal and business separate. If you needed to make changes, like you completely moved your space, you added new owners, fill in the blank, there's a $10 fee for the change. And you should do that so it's current, because again, having your LLC protect you means your information is current. That is someone else in the room doing something that someone else in the room taught me how to do. But the other thing that an LLC requires you to have, unlike a sole proprietor, is a registered agent. A registered agent is literally the person who is available to get what's called service of process. So like if you got sued and someone gives papers and says you got served, not just a movie with Channing Tatum, that is the person who receives that paperwork. It can be you as the business owner. It could be a trusted advisor, an accountant, a lawyer, a business services person. They're going to charge you for that. This person has to have a physical address within the state of Washington for your business. So the reason you might not want it to be you is you don't want your physical address to be public, or you're really bad at checking your mail. So if you are one of those things, have someone else be that person. But otherwise, you have to have it, and it can be you. So this is what the Secretary of State's website looks like when you log in, so you know where you're going. It actually starts on the About the Office tab with Steve Hobbs, the current Secretary of State of Washington, in case anyone was wondering. You're going to go to the Corporations and Charities tab and click on Corporations and Charities Filing System. You'll create a login. So you do all of your renewals, and it'll walk you through the system. I do not have all the walk you through the slides about this today, but I can share them with you. I can share guides on what to do, and we can even do them together. So let's talk about this BOI thing. So we do these Simba business tips on our social media about all kinds of things. So follow our social media, something might apply to you. And we talk about events on there and all kinds of other great things. This is from our old social media before Alexis joined us, and it looks a lot nicer now because I'm not great at Canva. So this was the best I could do. But BOI is beneficial ownership information. Again, it's for all LLCs, corporations, formal partnerships, and other formal business structures in the entire United States. Formed before January 1, 2024, you have to complete it by January 1, 2025. Formed January 1, 2024 forward, 90 days. What is it exactly? Sole proprietorships and DBAs don't have to file them. So if you're just a sole proprietor, you don't have to do it. It is based on a federal law, the Corporation Transparency Act of 2020. So we're really fast on getting laws enacted and starting, because it got passed in 2020 and it's 2024 and we just started doing it. It's through FinCEN, which is, Sarah, remind me what FinCEN is. Thank you. FinCEN is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. The purpose of this law was to find out who's laundering money, quite frankly, or hiding their assets or moving them around. I know it's you. I know it's you. Or your cats. But the federal government doesn't know that sweet Alexis might be laundering money. So they make everyone do it, not nonprofits. The reason not nonprofits is because nonprofits file a very aggressive and long tax return that has all this information in it anyway. But it's their way of finding out who actually owns and has access to the financial profits of a business, so you're not setting up shell corporations for other people to take those things. It's relatively simple on the FinCEN website, fincen.gov, BOI. Before you start, though, have the photo ID, the name, and personal address of all the owners of your business. If you don't have those ready, you can't complete it, and it's not something where you can start it and save it and come back. Do it all at once. Takes 10 minutes. Again, failure to file may result in penalties. They said it's $500 a day. I have not heard, and I tried to do some research last night. I went to a birthday party. One of our friends turned 40 and rented out the carousel. So we rode the carousel. And I was trying to look last night to see if this happened, if they're actually finding people, and it's unclear, but it's also going to be an administrative fine, so that's probably not publicly available. So I don't know, so I just wouldn't risk it. And if you want this handout, just let me know and I'll email it to you on how to do it with screenshots. I see you. So let's talk about something more fun. DBAs, trade names, and stage names, because all of you who perform are maybe not using your name. So you can obtain a DBA, which is also called a doing business as registration, to use any name or names in conjunction with your business license. So this is the first way to get protection of your business name, your performer name, your stage name. When you file your business license, you can choose a DBA, also called a trade name. It's $5 per name. So if you perform with multiple names, or you, is it 10 now? I think yours is 10 because you have 2 trade names. But I might have to update my slide. It's between $5 and $10, but I believe it's because you registered 2. DBA, doing business as, trade name, same thing. You can do this if you're just a sole proprietor. So the first level of protection allows no one else doing business in Washington to use your name at all. We use trade name interchangeably. It's not quite the right language. It's not the same. Trade name is often confused with trademark. They're not the same. Trade name is just the name you use in business. So for example, SIMBA Spokane. So we're the Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance. I never say it because I stumble over my words. And because we started in Spokane, but working all over Eastern Washington. And I also like a cat pun, so I've got a lot of them related to that. But we also own SIMBA Spokane as a trade name. We own Live Local INW, Live Local INW something, or Inland Northwest all spelled out. We own a bunch of them because we don't want someone else to use them. So you can have multiple. It's not a trademark, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then part of trademark is wordmark. And this is something that may be relevant for you as performers. Wordmark is just a word in any font, in any, or set of words, in any font, any colors, any organization, a way to protect your performer name beyond trade name. Trade name or DBA is better than nothing, but it doesn't provide a ton of protections. A trademark or wordmark, which we'll talk about, provides a lot more protections and full ownership in kind of your name, image, likeness, if you will. Some people who are massive celebrities have name, image, likeness protections because they've been out in the wild forever. Beyonce, good example. Because, right, you don't even know her last name. I know her last name. It's coming up in here, and her full middle name. But you don't know. I had to look up Taylor Swift because I wasn't sure that that was her real last name. It is her real last name. So, but someone like a Beyonce or Madonna or fill in the blank, everyone who has a name that's not their name, Tom Cruise, that's not his real name. They have additional protections because they've been out in the wild and they have a bunch of other registrations, but this is a way to start getting you. So definitely at the least, another reason to get a business license for your sole proprietor is to register your name so no one else can be Miss Masticate in the wild. You don't want me trying to steal that imagery. That's right. Kate said, that's how you know you've made it because what is it? Imitation is the highest form of flattery. Probably not if I do it. So Washington State has a registry for trademarks and wordmarks. Wordmark, again, is just words. A trademark is like a logo. There were all the publicly available logo photos were of fancy cars, which was interesting. But I couldn't find like the Nike swoosh in a publicly available name. But you all know if you see the swoosh, it's Nike, right? So it may or may not be words. Tiffany blue is trademarked. That specific color of Tiffany. That's not eggshell. That's not whatever this light blue is here. Specific blue. Um, but it's always in the same font, the same colors. Sometimes there's an image, sometimes there's not. Nike swoosh. A word mark again is just words. Could be just a name. It could be a phrase. I'm loving it. The McDonald's thing, they have a trademark on that, which is wild to me how they got it because it feels very generic, but they do. So in advertising, no one else can say I'm loving it with the lovin, Lovin, with the apostrophe, excuse me. It's a higher level of protection, just DBA or trade name for your business. So this is a trademark and not a word mark because when you see a Jaguar car, it always has the cat on it, so long as no one's stolen it off the front of the vehicle. So that is a trademark because it is the specific cat in the specific shape, in the specific design with that particular font and the word spelled out. They also have a trademark for just the cat, the way it looks and how it's presented as well. To apply for a Washington State word mark, so if you want to register your names, there is a handout on the back table. Washington State trademark and word mark. So word or phrase only, like Beyonce or Hosier. Hosier is apparently his last name or like hyphenated last name. You have to complete a paper form. There's no online version of the form. It's $55 for category you want to use it in. So if you are a performer and an educator, you might want to do it in entertainment and education, for example. But if you pay for this, you exclusively own the right to use that word or phrase, so long as it's not too generic. Like, for example, Band-Aid. Band-Aid no longer has a trademark on the name Band-Aid or a trade name because everyone says Band-Aid, whether you got the Costco version or the Band-Aid version. But so long as it's your name, your stage name, your performer name, your fill in the blank, you can have it exclusively for yours for 5 years from the date you file, and you can renew it indefinitely through the state of Washington. Again, you are the only one who gets to use it in your industry. No one else can use it. So they can imitate you and try to be you, but they couldn't be whatever performer you are. So I highly recommend this if you are performing or you're painting. The artist who did all the paintings in here right now is Gwen Pavanka. She uses her full name, so she doesn't need to have a different name. But if you're Banksy, you might want a different name registered somewhere. Again, this is for the state of Washington. So if you're working in the state of Washington, this is not federal protection, but is the next step to federal protection. Beware of generic words, as I mentioned. You can't register the word blue for exclusive use. I almost used someone's cat there. You could register something like BBL Drizzy, but maybe someone took that already. This tells you maybe I'm online too much, if you know what that means. Again, if you want to register your stage name, trade name, performer name in specific font and colors, if you always want Comic Sans and Barbie Pink, that is a trademark registration. You can also do that with Washington State. It's the same application. It's a lot more detailed and technical. You probably want a lawyer to help you do that, or at least someone who has experience filing these kinds of things. It's going to cost you more than $55. So for example, I use Banksy. So if you want Banksy in Meriwether font in the color black every time, and you'd use like the hex code to identify specifically what color it is, you can also file for that in the state that you are using it in. Again, this protects you in Washington. But if it's just a name, you can 100% fill this form out yourself. It's very easy. Our printers at Garland Printing are amazing, but they printed this like a booklet. And if you fill this out, the Secretary of State does not want you to give it to them as a booklet, so just cut it and submit it. They were just going above and beyond. Oops. Washington State protection is not the same as federal protection. Federal trademark or word mark protection is applied for at the USPTO, which is the United States Patent and Trade Office. Do not do that without a lawyer or it will get rejected. You need to expect to pay that lawyer thousands of dollars in addition to the hundreds of dollars it costs to do it federally. Only do this if you, two things. You're working in multiple states, you want no one else to take your name, and you have enough money to pay a lawyer thousands of dollars to help you with the application. But also, a lot of people say, I want to register my trade name right away. In Washington, you can reserve a trade name for $35 or a trademark or a word mark. federally, you could reserve it, but to actually get trademark protection federally where you have the TM, and just writing the TM or the R in the circle on your name gives you no protection, just FYI. I see a lot of people do that. I'm like, no, because you can look them up to see if they are there. So maybe start doing it. Yeah, doesn't help. But to get a trademark or a patent or not a patent, but a trademark, a trade name, fill in the blank, you have to have shown that you have used the name in commerce. You can't use the name in commerce if you haven't done business under that name. So that's why the Washington registration is a nice starting point, because then you're showing I own it, I've used it. You can show ads, fill in the blank to supplement your application, because you get denied if you haven't used it in commerce. So again, this is the future when you all have taken over the world. But know that you're not getting federal protection, you're getting state protection, but state protection is kind of the pathway to federal protection. So let's talk about contracts. Yeah, please ask your question.
Okay, can you word mark something?
Yes.
And then someone comes along and says, I love this artwork. I want to be the only place that sells it. I want to buy that word mark. Do you sell word mark?
Yeah, good question. So the question was, if you own a word mark, can you sell your word mark? Yes, you are allowed to assign or license or create a bunch of different contracts to allow people to use your word mark, to use your trademark, both state and federal. You definitely want a lawyer to make sure that it's fitting the parameters. You can sell it completely to someone and somebody else owns it, so you can transfer it. Or you can license it to allow people to use it in their space, for example. So there are a lot of ways to go about that. So you can transfer it if you sell your business, for example. You can choose not to transfer it as you sell your business. So there's a bunch of ways to go around that. So that's actually a great question. Yes. Contracts. If you sign a contract, you're legally bound by everything that's in the written agreement. It does not matter what was talked about beforehand. If it's not in what you signed, almost never are you going to win a fight saying, well, they promised me this, because you're deemed to have read everything you've signed. Everything. Even when you download new software and like your iPhone updates and you have to scroll and you say agree, you have agreed to everything that's in there, whether you've read it. And I will say for contracts like that, you don't have the ability to negotiate with Apple anyway. You don't have Apple money, or you wouldn't be here on a Saturday either, listening to a nonprofit director speak to you. But you're bound to know what's in there. So it does not matter about text messages, emails, DMs, whatever that person told you doesn't count. Also, generally doesn't count what happens after that agreement if you're changing it, if you haven't changed it formally. So if you take anything away from today, read every contract. I know they are dry. I know they are boring. You don't need to read they call them end user license agreements for like Apple software and things, EULAs. You don't need to read that because you don't have any power. You don't need to read like the terms and conditions of your credit card because you also don't have any power against a Visa or MasterCard. You're not going to win the fight. You might want to know what happens, but you're deemed to know it. One thing that is totally irrelevant to this presentation but comes up a lot is cruises. Like what happens if you're injured on a cruise? And there's a bunch of fine print when you buy a ticket to a cruise. You have to go fight it in Florida, or you have to go to a foreign country to fight it if you were injured and sue them. So that one I would say is if you're going on a cruise, maybe read it just in case, or just don't go on a cruise. Just my own personal viewpoint on that. Just
Performers on cruises that have like zero rights whatsoever because they're in some foreign country.
yes. So yeah, in the room mentioned that a lot of performers go on cruises and they effectively have zero rights, and you're just kind of bound and stuck, which is valid.
So we're talking about me signing a contract that somebody is hiring me. Is there
Correct.
situations where I need a contract for somebody else?
Sure. So the question was, we're talking about contracts that you as a performer or artist would sign because somebody's hiring you to do some work. Is there a situation you need a contract for someone else? Maybe. If you're selling a costume, for example, and you want to have more than a purchase order, because if you're selling a costume for a burlesque performance, you want the parts that have to stay on to hold up, so to speak. Yes, you may want a contract for someone else. You have more power there as the person providing the goods or services, but also vendor contracts if you're hiring a caterer, right? What if all of you get food poisoning. We have insurance, FYI, if all of you get food poisoning. So you're safe. We have really good insurance. But there's all kinds of spaces where you're going to look at contracts. So sometimes, yes. So these kind of skills we're going to talk about will apply to all of that. Again, if you learn nothing today, learn to read your contract before you sign it. Again, generally the only things that matter are the things that are in the contract. We call it the four corners of the agreement. Literally within the four corners of the pages of your contract are the only things that matter. The actual legal term for things that are outside of the scope of your contract is called the parole evidence rule, P-A-R-O-L, not P-A-R-O-L-E, like out on parole. I will just tell you generally, no, none of it comes in. It doesn't matter if your buddy said, oh, I'm going to pay you in 30 days, but the contract says 60 days. If you signed it, tough luck. Tough luck. So that stuff is usually not going to help you win a fight. There are some rare exceptions. Duress is one of them. This is getting kind of in the weeds. Duress is not just I was stressed out and I felt forced. Duress is like literal gun to your head. So again, read the agreements. And if it doesn't say what you think it should say, or if someone gives you a form contract that says you're going to perform 3 times and be on this stage and do this thing, and they say, don't worry, it's just a form contract, please say no. Or please cross off an initial, the parts you don't agree with, and see if they'll accept that. Because you can be bound to those things, even if they say, oh, it's just whatever, this is our standard contract. Don't sign those contracts. Some of us have seen that contract, personally. So things you're going to look for in a contract as a performer, an artist, a vendor, a fill in the blank, payment terms, when and how you're getting paid. Are you getting a deposit in advance? Are you getting paid after the performance, before the performance? Are you getting paid by check, which happens a lot still, which is wild. Venmo, fill in the blank, what does that look like? When and how are you getting paid? Termination or cancellation causes. How do you break a contract if you're sick and can't perform? How does somebody who hires you break a contract if they have to cancel the event? And also, what happens if you do break the contract? Is someone going to owe someone money? Does it depend on how close to the event? Does it depend on any number of things? Fill in the blank. So they're called termination or cancellation clauses. Payment terms, usually payment terms. Required insurance. Do you need to provide insurance in addition to the insurance the building has? Where you're performing, for example. Does the building have insurance? You should ask that as a performer, as an artist. Even if you're hanging your art on the wall, and I know the video is not capturing the beautiful art in the room, but if your art falls and hits someone, is it your fault? Find out. So make sure you have insurance and make sure you follow what you need. So a lot of times, for example, we're tabling at a lot of events this summer. So if you're out in the wild at Pride or Pride and Perry or World Refugee Day, fill in the blank. We'll have a table. We'll have stickers and goodies. Come say hi. But we have to have insurance in case, I don't know, my stickers cut someone or my table falls over, fill in the blank. Make sure you know what that is. If you need gig-related insurance, there's a group called ACT Insurance, A-C-T Insurance. They offer temporary insurance for like specific gigs at really reasonable prices, like very reasonable prices. And they can process it usually in 2 days. So I highly recommend them, and they have a lot of options for things like if you're working at a farmer's market or you're doing a festival or you're fill in the blank, temporary insurance is great from there. Enforcement clauses, sometimes also called dispute resolution. What happens if you're having a fight about the agreement? They said they're going to pay you in 30 days. They've ghosted you. You haven't gotten paid. How do you handle that dispute? If the contract tells you how you have to handle it, you have to handle it that way to get that money back, for example. Attorney's fees clauses. This is a fun one. So in the American system, the reason why there's so many seemingly frivolous lawsuits is because it's generally a pay-as-you-go system. So people who have money can file whatever they want, whenever they like, and there are definitely attorneys who will happily take that money to file your frivolous lawsuit. And there's no consequences, generally. Because if they lose, the other side's not paying their fees. In most European countries, if you lose a dispute, the other side pays your attorney's fees, which can get more than the value of a case, quite frankly. So they don't have frivolous litigation in most Western nations, but in America we do. So one thing to look for, because you're not guaranteed attorney's fees, like let's say there's a dispute. If there's an attorney fee clause in there, that allows you to hire a lawyer if you're in the right and you win, and they not only pay you for your damages, like the amount of money you're out, the amount you should have gotten paid, the amount of stress you've gone through, fill in the blank, but they may have to pay your lawyer too, which is a very nice way to get a lawyer to take your case for free because generally they make you pay in advance. The other thing you should know about that is sometimes those clauses are one-sided where they say, if we win, you pay our fees, but not if you win, we pay your fees. There's no such thing as a one-sided attorney fee clause in the state of Washington, so you're good. But look for that and ask for that, quite frankly, especially if it's somebody you haven't worked with before. Confusing. The other thing, and this is just like the cruise ship, is choice of law or governing law. You may be performing in Washington, but they may say the laws of the state of Nevada apply, which means if you're having a fight, you're going to have to hire a lawyer in Nevada. They may also say that if you're having a dispute, you have to have it in a court in Florida, even though your event took place in California. Meaning you're going to have to travel and show up in person, because Zoom court was a thing for a while, but it really is not generally. So make sure you're reading that before you sign it. If there's a choice of law, ask questions why it's not the state you're having your event in, if it is not the state you're having the event in. And then satisfaction clauses is a really interesting thing. This happens a lot. Oh, ask your question.
Specifically written out, the choice of law, governing law.
Yeah.
Do you get to stick with the state that you're signing in, performing in?
Yeah. So the question was, if choice of law or governing law is not written out, do you get to stick with the law of where you're performing, presenting, fill in the blank? The answer is generally yes, which is every legal answer. Yes, you'd probably win that fight, but if someone wanted to fight that it's the location where the corporation you signed it with is located and it's not in Washington, you could have that fight. You would probably win because generally it's based on where something occurs. So likely yes, but there's never, the only clear legal answer I've ever been able to give someone is what happens if I got a red light ticket. I promise you they have a photo of you in your car going through the red light. So that's the only certainty. The other thing is a satisfaction clause. So this happens a lot with like makeup artists or people who are painting portraits or fill in the blank. Sometimes there's a clause that says, me as the buyer, if I don't like it, I don't have to pay you. So be aware of those. It could apply to a performance as well. Be aware of what the parameters are of that. If you show up telling me you can sing and you are off key and it's awful, do I have to pay you? I don't know. Only if it's written in the contract does that come up, but it does come up. So definitely read that, ask questions. What it is usually unfortunately it's the reasonable man standard, because this is America. So, but generally, like, would a reasonable person think that was good? Would a reasonable person think I couldn't do that on a lira, so I should pay for it? So let's look at an actual contract. So I made a contract between Simba and Beyonce Giselle Knowles Carter. That's her middle name, in case you were wondering. Apparently she lives in Seattle because I wanted Washington rules to apply here. And she's going to perform a holiday hoedown on July 4th for Simba. Pretty excited. Look for tickets soon from 8 to 11. She's only charging us $10,000, which is incredible. So usually the first part of it identifies the parties, the people in the contract who are bound by this agreement. So there's going to be an address, how to get a hold of them. That is Simba's real address. We're upstairs from Emma Rue's. We call Emma Rue's Simba South because we're always there drinking coffee. A description of your services. What are you going to do? Who's going to do it? When is it going to happen? And what the performer, artist, fill in the blank is going to do for you. So Beyonce's got to show up an hour ahead of time to do sound check. I have had the pleasure of going to 5 of her concerts. They have never started on time. One of them was 2.5 hours late, but she did fly in a helicopter into the middle of Safeco, so that was kind of cool. But she has to suit the mood of the event, so that's kind of like a satisfaction clause. If she's not singing 4th of July theme music, I might be like, no thanks. She can have an unlimited collection of songs. But she can't perform with any real breaks, right? So you should know that. Like, are you getting a break? Are you sitting on a pair of silks for 2 hours? Are you doing burlesque for 45 minutes? What does that look like? It tells me that Beyonce has to bring her own microphone and sound equipment. My guess is she always brings her own equipment. But no, if you have to bring your own equipment, if you have to bring your own lighting, if you have to bring your own water, your own clicker, this is the best $30 we've ever spent because we do a lot of presentations. We're gonna give her a dressing room. We're gonna let her have her space as if she's not coming on a private jet that has a room in it. And we're gonna give her food and other refreshments. So know what you're getting and what you need to bring for yourself. We are gonna pay her in one lump sum at the completion of her performance. We didn't tell her how we were gonna pay her. I didn't spend that much time working on this contract. But sometimes there's a deposit up front. And you should ask for one, especially if you can, in a position to ask. If it's a space you haven't performed in, for sure. Find out what that looks like, but also find out when you're getting paid. So it does say end of performance. End of performance is pretty vague. I guess I'm giving her a check for $10,000 when she leaves the stage, perhaps. But end of performance could be the literal end of performance. It could be 5 days later. So if you see something like that, maybe it's not as clear. Cancellation, that's also that termination clause, what it looks like. All deposit fees are non-refundable. This contract didn't have any deposits, but if there was a deposit, nobody gets it back. So if I pay a deposit to Kate for her to do a performance for me and I cancel, she gets to keep the deposit, whatever amount it is. But it might not say that. There's notice provisions on who gets to cancel within 5 days. But if no one cancels within 5 days of the event on July 4th, then everyone has to pay. Beyonce has to pay me back if she doesn't show up and cancels on July 2nd. So they need to be fully refunded. If I paid her a deposit, I'm getting them back. This contract, the term, like how long does this contract last? Often in there, the day she signs it to the day after her event. And then we have parted ways and we're done. Relationship of the parties. This is really important for performers, gig workers, artists. Making clear that she is not an employee of Simba. I definitely can't afford to hire her. She's an independent contract, which means she's responsible for her own taxes, her own business license, her own record keeping, her own fill in the blank. Generally, as a performer, you are not an employee, you're an independent contractor. Indemnification is where insurance comes up. So indemnification is a common part of a contract. It literally means if something goes wrong, this one says if something goes wrong, Beyonce is responsible to indemnify us. Indemnify literally means pay for us to resolve the issue. So make sure that you, as performer, are not required to indemnify someone if something goes wrong, because that means you're on the hook for their lawyers, their insurance premiums, their fill in the blank to fix the situation, their construction contract if your rig falls from the ceiling or art falls from the sky. So indemnification clauses are incredibly densely worded. Read them and know what they mean. Reach out to an attorney. We have a great list of people to refer you to who are local and reasonably priced if you have one of those that you don't understand. Force majeure. We also often call this the acts of God clause. This is the one that says if there's a hurricane, not going to happen in the Northwest. Likely not to happen in the Northwest. If there's an earthquake, if the building burned down, if there's a fill in the blank thing that nobody caused, everyone walks away. Nobody owes anyone anything else. So force majeure is the French term for that, force of nature, often called acts of God. This just basically says if something goes wrong and it's somebody's fault, we're cool, everyone walks away. It is implied, but it's nice to have those in there because you don't want to be responsible if the city of Spokane has construction outside of your facility and no one can reach it for your event. It's not your fault. You don't have to pay people back. Good question. Yes.
Or just God's power and I mean, like if I get sick, I'm not under control of that.
So if you get sick, that's kind of on you. This one does include if there's a quarantine or a public health crisis, but not a you. So the question was, what if I get sick? Where does acts of God end? Generally, no. Sometimes it includes if a person gets sick, if a person fills in the blank, but oftentimes that's one where you're going to potentially eat whatever the termination fee is. So wars, riots, lots of things are often in there. These, the force majeure clauses and the indemnification clauses tend to be the longest parts of a contract because they put every possible thing. So if it's not spelled out, it's on you. Dispute resolutions we talked about are contract enforcement. How do we resolve this? So this one says if we have a fight, we're going to mediation first and then we're going to arbitration. These might say you have to file suit in Spokane County. You have to file a lawsuit in Florida. You have to do X, Y, and Z. This is the only way you're allowed to fight about this contract and get a result. So for example, generally, if you don't get paid, look for the dispute resolution or enforcement clause, and that will tell you how you have to go about getting paid. You can't just necessarily send someone to collection, for example. You have to follow these steps. It's called exhaustion of remedies. You have to try to do everything it said you were agreed to do because you signed the contract, whether you read it or not, to do it. And then there's often this entire contract or four corners clause that says that it doesn't matter what you said outside. It doesn't matter what you did in writing. It doesn't matter the DMs and text messages. Everything that's in this contract are the only things that apply. And again, even if it doesn't have that, it's what's in the agreement. Amendment. They often include a lot of these, like you could make an amendment. So let's say before the agreement you said, yeah, I wasn't going to ask for a deposit, but I want a deposit. It's going to cost me a lot of money to get ready for this event, so I want some of my payment up front. It'll tell you how to amend in writing. If it needs to be in writing, if it can be verbal, what it looks like. I would never amend a contract verbally because then if you're fighting about it, it's he said, she said, and it's who they believe or like better. And maybe it's not you. Everyone in the room obviously would be the liked person, but make sure you're doing that. Again, the governing law, what laws apply. If it's blank, you have that fight. Notice, this is important. How you let people know there's a dispute or a problem is going to be spelled out. And so this one says notice has to be by certified mail return receipt, meaning I can't email Beyonce and say, hey, you're not here. What's going on? That's not notice under the contract. Notice has to be in whatever format is here. So I often ask people to tell them if they're signing a contract, like, let them know email can be an option. A lot of them say fax still, which is wild. Look for that. If you don't have a fax machine, don't sign that contract if there's notice. This waiver is if some part of the agreement's not enforceable because a law changes after the fact or whatever, that part is stricken and everything else is still okay. That's a really technical thing that doesn't necessarily matter for these purposes. Okay. Bookkeeping and deductions. I know we've covered so many things. And again, I will share the slides. I did include a delivery driver because that is often a gig worker, although Frank is not a gig worker because he owns the company. You have to file your B&O, business and occupation. That's your state taxes. And tax reports usually quarterly, sometimes monthly, depending on the kind of business. You'll know. Failure to file results in penalties. You do it the same time and same place as your business license. So once you get your business license, you're also paying state taxes. Your state taxes are a deduction from your federal filing. So I always think of it as you have to pay the money to somebody, maybe keep it where you live, and your state tax dollars actually stay, like 70% stays in the community where you are. So I don't know what they're doing with the money, but at least it's staying here potentially for roads. Everything is under construction right now. If you have no income for that quarter, you didn't do any gig work under your license, you didn't sell a costume, you didn't paint a painting, you still have to do a no income filing, which is a checkbox. Failure to do that results in penalties. Again, you do it at the Department of Revenue. You can ask for an extension. The state of Washington is really kind about giving extensions. They're very lovely about it. You just fill out a little form and they usually give you 30 to 60 days. So they're great about that. If you don't ask for an extension, you're late, there are penalties and it's hard to waive them. They're small, but they add up. So if you think you're not going to make it on time, ask for an extension. And I'm not going to go over what the state tax filing looks at, but if you need help with that, we can help you with that. We can walk you through the first one. We can walk you through multiple ones. The first one is the hardest because you have to check all the spaces of the kinds of work you're doing. But after that, it auto-fills for you, which is really nice because it's online, so it's quicker. sales tax. If you're selling things, you're selling art, you're selling stickers, you're selling scones, then you are effectively collecting sales tax, or they're adding the tax on, or it's included in the price. You're responsible for filing and paying that sales tax. Spokane County, it's 8.1 to 9.2. Airway Heights is 9.2 right now. So if you're selling something in Airway Heights, you're collecting or paying sales tax of 9.2. For a while, Liberty Lake was the highest, and we were talking about the Real Housewives of Liberty Lake, but it is no longer the highest. It's Airway Heights. Again, you're collecting it either as part of the gross sale or coming out. So if you're selling tickets to an event and you say they're $15, sales tax is going to be deducted in some way, whether you add it onto the price or you pay it otherwise. Here's what you really care about, though. Bookkeeping and tax deductions. To maximize or minimize, honestly, the amount you pay in taxes, and to be able to have records if you're applying for a grant or a loan. You should have some system. It doesn't have to be formal. A spreadsheet is great. I love a spreadsheet. I told someone at another event that one of my favorite people I follow on TikTok is someone named Excel with Grant, EXCEL, who gives you tips and tricks on using spreadsheets. Not a joke, sadly. I also get his newsletter. You can do paper account books. I've definitely dealt with people who have those like old school accounting books that you can buy at Staples. Be consistent. It can be on a notebook. Be consistent. There's all kinds of software. Everyone knows QuickBooks, Xero, Zoho, Sage, FreshBooks, Quicken. A ton of them available. They all do kind of the same thing. A lot of them are cheaper than others. Here's what I'll say if you're choosing to buy one of these pieces of software. Before you sign up and pay for it, make sure if you need to take your data because you close your business, because you want to switch systems, that you can download your data in a way that you can transfer it somewhere else, even if it's a spreadsheet. Some of them are very tricky or they charge you to take your data. You don't want to work for those ones because let's say you want to go from Zoho to QuickBooks. They do let you download your data in a way that you can just put it into QuickBooks without you having to manually input everything. But if they don't, you have to manually re-input everything into your new system. And even if you close your business, you need to keep your records for generally 7 years. It's 3 years from the date of when you filed your tax return is when you have to keep it. And if you filed it late, it's 3 years from that date, not 3 years from the date of the year you filed. So don't sign up for one of these if you don't know how you can get your data. Don't rely on your bank statements to track your income and expenses. Because if you're filing taxes and you show up to your accountant and you're like, hey, I've done nothing, here's my this, and they have to help you do it or you have to help you do it, you're going to miss deductions. You're going to pay that accountant so much money and they're going to love you. But you're not taking advantage of the things that can be saving you money because every tax deduction lowers the amount you pay in taxes and allows you to budget and do other important things for your business. So track as you go. And as you go doesn't have to be every day, but have some kind of system. Maybe it's monthly, maybe it's quarterly. If you're not doing a lot of business, your gigs are smaller, you're doing less, but do it consistently. It is critical if you ever want to apply for a loan or a grant, they're going to want to know what your income and expenses are. That's also why you should have a business bank account. And here's an example I always use. It is fine if every once in a while you go to a locally owned independent coffee shop, which is not Starbucks, to buy your morning coffee on your business account. Once in a while is fine. Every day is not fine. So it's okay if it's a random one here or there that you can account for. Do not pay your personal rent, your personal mortgage, your personal car payment, your shopping spree at Nordstrom. Do not use your personal bank or your business bank account for that because then you're not managing your accounts correctly and your personal assets are at risk, even if you're an LLC or a corporation. In addition to basic bookkeeping, let's plan for your federal tax filings. How are you tracking your business deductions? Are you fully self-employed and making quarterly or federal tax filings? What is a write-off? And I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to do it on here. Alexis, I might need you to assist me to get this.
What's this? Looks expensive.
This is some new bedding.
David, didn't I just tell you to save your money?
Yeah, I am testing this out for the store, so work is paying for it.
Work is paying for your bedding?
I was gonna leave, but now I don't want to. So.
What is that? Is that a new lamp?
Yeah, I'm thinking of bringing homeware into the store, so that's a write-off.
That's a write-off?
Yeah.
Do you even know what a write-off is?
Yeah, it's when you buy something for your business and the government pays you back for it.
Oh, and who pays for it?
Nobody. You write it off.
Who writes it off?
I don't know. The write-off people. What? Why are we having this conversation?
So if I need booze to get through my day, I can just write that off?
That's a stretch.
But the skincare products you got this morning, those are a write-off.
What skincare products? You purchased skincare products?
Okay. I am the face of the company. If I have acne, what does that say about the legitimacy of the store?
That's not a write-off. That's not a write-off. This? Not a write-off.
Oh, well, the bedding's non-refundable, so...
David, a write-off is a business expense used to reduce your taxable income.
Okay, well then, why isn't it called a tax write-off?
It is! It is! You can't just buy things for yourself and write them off.
Well, then I'll return some things. There's not enough space in here for the massage chair anyway.
I should get back to work, just in case any more of your packages arrive.
So, oops. Dad is right here. They're not write-offs. They're not write-offs. And writing something off doesn't mean it's free. I remember when I was running a business, I had to buy a new computer. Meaning I had to pay for the computer from the business account. And I own the business, so technically that is my money at the end of the day. And my staffer at the time said, oh, well, it's a write-off. And I was like, yeah, but I still have to pay $800 for it immediately. A write-off is just something that lowers the amount you pay in taxes. You still pay for it. You or your business owner, you still pay for it. You don't get a check from the IRS for the computer. You definitely don't get a write-off your skincare for most industries. But there's some fun ones for gig workers and kind of for everyone. Advertising and marketing, everyone gets to write that off. That includes things like your website, your domain hosting fees, your domain names, business cards if you have them, things like stickers that are promoting your event or little signs that's probably also advertising and marketing. You get to write that off. Again, you're still paying for them. You don't get to go to Garland Printing and say, well, it's a write-off. Nobody pays for it. They still want to get paid. Your rent and lease of your business space. So this is a co-working space that we're in right now. So if you rented a desk here or one of the formal offices for your business, the rent or lease for your business is there. If you needed studio rental, you're recording a song, you're painting, you're practicing aerial, you're dancing, you're singing, you're fill in the blank, that is a write-off. If you have insurance, liability insurance, which is what happens if something goes wrong, somebody gets injured, right? Property insurance, which is how do I protect my assets? Property can be real property, which is buildings and land. It can also be what we call personal property, even if it's business property, which is like liras, microphones, paint, paper, fill in the blank. Those premiums are deductible. If you hire an accountant or lawyer, what you pay those people is deductible. Software. QuickBooks, Canva, Adobe Pro, fill in the blank software you need for your business, deduction. Office supplies, so office supplies are not things you're selling, it's things you're using to do your job. Paper, pens, fill in the blank kinds of office supplies. Those, I heard that, are office supplies. The example, some of the performers in here may have purchased worms, fuzzy worms to make costumes. Thousands of them, literally thousands of them. That is the cost of a good because you're using it to create something, or it's actually probably part of your costume. Cost of goods is if I buy something to sell it. Common in a restaurant. I buy food to prepare a meal to sell it. I buy a t-shirt and I'm a screen printer. The t-shirt's the cost of good. I buy stationery and print on it because I make cards, that's a cost of good. Repairs and maintenance to business equipment could also be like inspections and things to make sure like your rigging, for example, in your aerial studio, so your students don't plummet to their death when they're 20 feet in the air. Deduction. Contractor payments. If you hired someone to help you, that's when you need a contract, as we mentioned before. If you hire someone, those payments to you are deductions, which is why you shouldn't pay people under the table, because you don't get the benefit. I know you're maybe trying to save someone from filing taxes, but you as the person paying them get to deduct every dollar you give to somebody else. So even if it's not that $600 threshold, so pay them in a way that you can track so you can lower your tax burden as the one paying someone. The person who receives the income as a contractor doesn't have to file in their tax return if it's less than $600. But if you don't have some record as the person paying someone, even if it's $5, you can't write it off. Bank charges and fees. So that is the amount to run your bank account. Credit card processing fees, Venmo fees, Etsy fees, Square fees. All of those are deductions, and you can pull those annually. So that's really important. Your business license, as we talked about, state taxes paid, your LLC filing fees, all deductions. Did you have a question? Or you just, oh, sorry. I thought you were raising your hand. If you're a performer, costume, wigs, makeup, sequined bodysuits, fill in the blank. Well, makeup is limited. If it is makeup you're only using for stage performing, yes. If it is makeup you're using every day, no. Right? So if you're buying something specific for that, also the wig would fit there, or the costume. If you just wear glittery worm-covered bodysuits out in the wild, not performing, not a write-off. But if you're using it just for that, a write-off. Paint, canvases, tools of the trade. Tools of the trade are anything you need to do your business. Paintbrushes, if you're a handyman, your tools, your video camera, your fill in the blank, anything you use to do your business, tools of the trade. Classes and lessons. If you take vocal lessons, if you take dance lessons, if you take a painting lesson, fill in the blank, to get better at what you're doing, you get to write that cost off. Cleaning and tailoring. Again, this is limited. Not cleaning and tailoring your everyday clothes, but if you have to get professional cleaning of a costume, or you have to get a costume altered, or fill in the blank, you can write that off too. And work-related travel and meals. So if you go to a conference, not a conference is a good example. If you go out of the country to perform, for example, and you are traveling there to do a performance, your travel expenses, your airfare, your hotel, your meals, your relevant travel fees are a write-off. The meals exception is 50% because the IRS believes you have to eat anyway. So you only get to deduct 50% of the cost. If you paid $50, you're deducting 25. But 25 is better than 0. It is not your meals while you're sitting at work. It is not your coffee while you're driving to the office. But if you have to be somewhere and you need to eat, you get to deduct that. And work-related travel. If you went, for example, to a conference, say in Hawaii, last week with the presentation, our accountant used this as a reference. You go to a conference in Hawaii, but you also spend 3 extra days hanging out in Hawaii because you're in Hawaii. You can write off your travel to and from for you, not for your family. You can't write off those extra 3 days in the hotel, but you can write off the other 4 days, for example. So it can be a mix of those. Keep your receipts, keep your receipts, keep your receipts. You don't have to keep them on paper. Electronically is just fine. The IRS does not care anymore. I recommend you put them in some kind of file. Maybe that's a Google Drive. Maybe that's whatever, Microsoft OneDrive, a flash drive, a fill in the blank. Please keep a backup. I know people talk about this all the time. Back it up in some way. Put it on a flash drive, an external drive, a whatever. Because if you lose it and you're audited and you can't prove your expenses, the IRS is going to make you pay them money. And they don't want your bank statement. They want the receipt. You don't want to give you a bank statement that says, oh, Clark's Cleaners to clean a costume. They want the receipt because they want to be able to look at it. So save your receipts. Again, generally 7 years is the rule. It's a little more convoluted than that, but 7 and you're going to be safe. So long as you have filed your tax return for those years. If you've never filed a tax return, you have to keep the receipts until you file the tax return plus 3 years. So keep those receipts. Oop, there we go. Mileage. Tracking mileage is perfectly available, especially for a gig worker. The mileage you track has to be business related, and it literally has to be tracked. It doesn't have to be tracked formally. Do it on a spreadsheet, do it on a piece of paper, keep notes. Keep the records again, 7 years. It's not for your commute. So if you have a usual place that you work, your office, from your house to your office, you cannot deduct that. But from your house to a performance at Overbluff Cellars downstairs, house being your place of business, for example, or your place of business, that's a deduction. If you have to go to Joann Fabrics to buy something for a costume and you're just going there for that, that's mileage you can write off. Maintain your records. There are 2 ways to do it. Either tracking your actual mileage that you use for work, which is almost easier sometimes, or knowing exactly what your odometer says at the start of the year and exactly what your odometer says at the end of the year, and having a reasonable percentage between business and personal travel. So it's much easier to just track it and try to remember. And if you forget, the other day I said MapQuest exists. It does still exist. Google Maps also exists, which is more common. If you forget and you're like, oh, I did go to Joann Fabrics, what's the mileage? You can always go pull that and write it down. A date. I have a really simple spreadsheet I can share. It's just a date, what the travel was for, and how many miles you went. The other alternative is to deduct the actual cost of your vehicle and attribute a percentage of it to your business. You can deduct mileage or actual costs. Yes.
What if part of your payment is travel? Like
Yeah. Good question. So what if part of your payment is travel or reimbursement for travel? If you're reimbursed by anyone else, you cannot deduct it because you're double dipping with the IRS and they don't like that. But the part that's not covered, you could deduct. That's a great question. That is often a common thing in a contract. So have some way to track it, keep those records, and choose. If you have an older vehicle where you've got a lot of extra costs going into it, a lot of repairs, more frequent oil changes, it burns through gas, you might want to do actual cost. You have to choose one. You cannot flip-flop between the two. So choose one and stick with it when you're filing your returns. Yes?
How does your mileage translate into a dollar value for the election?
Sure. So the question is, how does your mileage translate into a dollar value? The current federal rate for mileage deductions is 65.5 cents per mile.
That like on your form it automatically does that for you?
Yeah, so on your IRS form, when you fill it out, if you're using like a QuickBooks or TurboTax or any other software, it will calculate it for you. You say it's 1,000 miles and it creates the number. You can also use the formula by yourself. The formulas are available in the packet. An accountant can do the formula for you as well. So yes, so it ends up being 2/3 right now of your mileage. That number goes up and down. It actually has gone up and down at different years. It generally only goes up now because everything is more expensive. But you just have to input your mileage number. Okay, bonus content, grants and loans. We all want money. Grants are super rare for for-profit businesses. Just, they don't really exist anymore. Outside of COVID, there was a bunch of COVID funding. Everyone got grants. They were everywhere. We gave out like $300,000 in grants last year, so everyone thinks we still have grant money. We do not. I wish I did. But don't count on them for a source of income. However, people in the creative space, there are grants available. They come and go in different ways and different formats. One way to learn about them is to read our newsletter. You don't have to read the whole thing. It comes out the last week of every month. And there are links at the top. So you can skip all the other content like my exceptional executive director's letter, which you might want to read anyway. There's cat puns in it. Because we're Simba, right? We're a lion. But you can link to grants and loans and see if there's something that might apply to you. We also have software and we can do searches for you to let you know about grants that might be available. There are always deadlines. If you want help with one from us or another organization, do not wait to the end. A grant application can take hours and hours to put together. They are long, they are cumbersome. I just did one that we're waiting to hear back on that was 15 typed single space pages long. So generally they're not that long. But do not wait if there's something that you think applies to you. And a lot of people choose not to apply because it takes so much time or they don't complete it. So there's a chance you could get them. So there are those available for creative endeavors. So definitely don't wait on those. But they're rare, and they're still rare for creatives, but less rare than they are for someone like owning a restaurant. But some things you want to know if you're going to get a loan. As a business owner, gig worker or otherwise, it's going to be tied to your business and personal income. Always. Your personal credit score matters in getting a loan for your business. Even for very well-established businesses, they're going to look at your personal credit score. You need a business plan with real numbers. A business plan is a very formal document. We just got business planning software that you can use at no cost for 30 days and $10 for another 30 days to help you write a business plan that anyone will accept. So if you want to use that, let us know. We can put you in the queue for that if you're applying for a formal loan and they require it. If you're seeking funding, you have to have experience in the business you're seeking funding from if it's a startup business. I met with someone who works in skincare recently, and she has a bunch of money laying around. She said, I want to open a restaurant. And I said, do you have restaurant experience? No, she's never even worked at like a coffee stand. And I said, you're never going to get a loan because literally lenders, one, food jobs are very hard to lend to. So don't get into restaurant spaces unless you have a bunch of money. But if you don't have experience in what you're doing, they're not going to loan you the money. If you have experience in what you're doing, they're more likely to loan you the money. Even if it's a business loan, you're going to have to personally guarantee it, meaning if you don't pay it, if the business doesn't pay it back or the business folds, you still have to pay it back. So look for that. And to get any loan for your business, you have to have a business license. So if I haven't told you enough that you need a business license, you need a business license. And then kind of the hierarchy of banking. Big banks are the hardest to receive loans from for small businesses. Bank of America, US Bank. Not only do they have very high limits, like the least you can borrow is often $100,000, which you might not be able to pay back or justify or need, but they are really risk averse. They're conservative in the sense they're not going to take a risk on a business. They don't have ties to the community, and all their money goes to their investors and not to their local community. So if you have a business account at a big bank, a Bank of America, US Bank, a Chase Bank, I recommend you move that money. Regional banks are a little bit better. Umpquas, Whitman banks, things like that. They are still giving money to their shareholders, but they invest in the community. They have a little bit more ability to lend on a risky basis. Risky being just different kinds of businesses, smaller businesses. They can do smaller loans. Better than a Bank of America. Credit unions are fantastic. Sarah had to bail, but credit unions are really easy to work with. They often have no-fee business bank accounts. Big banks and regional banks always charge you just to have your money there, whether you're doing anything. I used to have an Umpqua account for my business, and I think it was like $60 a month no matter what I did. And then there was fees on top of that. I got charged fees for deposits into my account, which I thought was wild. So credit unions usually have no-fee accounts. They're very easy to lend. And if you have since they're easier to lend from, they often don't require as much underwriting and paperwork if you ask for a loan if you have an account at a credit union. Small Business Administration loans are tied specifically for small businesses. There's two kinds of them. One is for buying a building. The other one is for like things like operating capital, startup expenses. They're a little easier. They're usually through credit unions or things like Snap Financial. So you guys have probably heard of Snap. One of their offices is like right over there. They provide help for people for things like if they can't pay their Avista bill, but they have a whole separate side where they lend to small businesses in 13 Eastern Washington counties. And they can do loans as small as $500. So let's say you need a laptop to run your marketing business. They will give you a loan for $500 up to $150,000. They're trying to get to $250,000. They can only loan in the 13 Eastern Washington counties along the border. They're a CDFI, which is a community development fund or financial institution. So they are a nonprofit. They also will help you with your business plan if you're there. And if you don't quite qualify for some of them, they can usually get you into things. Craft 3 is a local lender for Northwest Washington businesses. Their minimum loan is $50,000, so that's pretty high. But They have some really interesting loan products as well, and some of their offices are literally in Spokane. MoFi is another CDFI. They have loans as small as $1,000. MoFi is a great space to go if you have bad personal credit, your business is newer, you need a smaller loan, you want to refinance predatory lending debts. They can help you rebuild your credit and establish your business credit. Loans are as small as $1,000. And then Sarah's left, Spokane Media Federal Credit Union. If you're in any kind of performance space, if you're going to work in media like TV, newsprint, if you're in film, if you're in advertising, if you're in performance of other varieties, you can often become a member of that credit union. They have done some cool things. So like last summer when some people locally were on strike as part of the Writers Guild or the other one that was on strike, blanking on it, they gave them loans so they could like pay their rent and eat because they weren't making any money, and they didn't have to pay them back for like 6 months, or they didn't have to start paying them back until 6 months after the strike ended. So they have a lot of flexibility, which is why I highly recommend a credit union. It's critical, again, to have a separate business account if you want to apply for a business loan or a grant, because they want to track that. They often ask for financial records. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and let Alexis talk to you.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, we're gonna get into some of the fun stuff. A little more loose, like you're not gonna get in trouble for not posting enough or like posting too many selfies, like the government's not gonna come after you or anything like that. I'm Alexis McLaughlin. I am, well, not for long, but I am the newest like business outreach person. And so my specialty is social media and marketing. I went to school at Eastern and I got my bachelor's in communication studies. And then since then, I've just been helping a lot of local businesses with website management, social media, and all that fun stuff. So social media, it's kind of sometimes like you either love it or you hate it. But it's important. It's important, especially if you are a gig worker. Basically, why it's important is it increases visibility and reach. It builds and showcases your personal brand. It connects you with potential clients and collaborators. And it also helps you stay up to date with industry trends. Basically, it's a great way to get your name out there, what you're doing out there. It's like a great way to connect with like your audience. Like if you start seeing someone at your gigs a lot and then they start following you, you have like that specific person that you now kind of just can kind of check in on, and you are like, hey, oh yeah, we follow each other on Instagram. So one of the main things people talk about when talking about social media is your target audience. And that's basically a group of people that your product, services, or marketing efforts are aimed towards, typically defined by traits like age, gender, income, interests, challenges, and goals. I like to always tell people that your target audience is not you. Like you are not your target audience. So think outside the box. Also, it's more than just like the age, gender, all that. It's really your like psychodemographics. So like what are their attitudes, lifestyles, interests, values, that you kind of want to dig deeper. You want to ask yourself, what does my service, my product does for people, it helps people. And then you kind of go from there. You also want to ask, where are these people getting their information and getting their news? Are they reading blogs? Are they using print media? Are they using social media? You want to kind of ask yourself, what is your target audience? Where are they at? Once you figure out your target audience, that is when you can get to having fun on social media. We have Instagram, and these age ranges are very broad. So if you, there's obviously a lot of people who are on Instagram who are not in that age range, but this is just the general age range. So age range is 18 to 34. Users value aesthetics and strong visual identity. So you'll be seeing a lot of videos, like Reels, which we'll talk about later. And then Facebook is the age range of 25 to 54. It's a little older demographic now, typically. Users value community. Good for community building and local services. And then there's TikTok, which I don't know how long that's going to last, hopefully. I don't know what I will do without TikTok personally. That age range is on the younger side, age 18 to 24. Users value entertainment and transparency. And then also, it's great for emerging platforms for short form content. And then there's also platforms like X, formerly known as Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube. YouTube is great, like if you are more of like you're an entertainer or you are like wanting to showcase some of like your events and videos, concerts, anything like that. LinkedIn is great if you're a business to business. And then X, Twitter, I don't know. I don't use it anymore. So I'm like, eh. But yeah, so if your demographic is kind of all over the place, I would recommend like making sure you have the top 3 or at least the top 2. TikTok, I would say, is kind of optional. TikTok is also really good for like across the United States and like actually outside of the States. So it's not as great for like local, if you're trying to target like local people around you. I would say Instagram and Facebook are really good for that. So what should your social media page say about you? This is very important. You want to definitely have your name or the name that you go by for your gigs, a logo if you have a logo, a 1-sentence bio which got cut off, your location, or if you don't have a location, definitely put your website if you have a website, contact information, links. There's that great thing in that people now do is link in bio. It's great. Have all of your important links in your bio, and then story highlights, which we can talk about a little bit more. This is Helmer. He's one of my like favorite artists in Spokane. I love him. So I was like, he has a good social media presence, so I'm going to highlight him. One thing about with you guys, specifically gig workers, is that your brand, you're not really like selling anything. So you're really like kind of promoting yourself. And so I think it kind of gets tricky because a lot of people start off with personal accounts and then they're like, oh, wow, this is really picking up. And then they start a business and they start, selling their services. So then you kind of go from like a personal account to a business. There's benefits, there's pros and cons to each side. With a personal account, it's used for personal content updating, but it does have limited analytics and marketing tools. And it's a little more informal, but it has more of a personal tone. And then business accounts are designed for promoting businesses and services. You have access to analytics, advertising, and marketing tools. And it's a little bit more professional. You also have the feature, which is the contact and business information feature, which is pretty useful. I personally, it's really up to you and what your preference, but I personally kind of gravitate towards accounts that are business. Like if this is your business, you're selling your services, have a business account. It just kind of enhances the professionalism. You also can just use all the other neat things like running ads and promotions, and you have better insights. But that doesn't mean that you can't post like a family photo here and there, or like a cat video or something on your business account, because you still want to make it personal. But it's just a balance of keeping things separate. And I think it's a little better just to have a business account. So once you get going, that is the fun part, is creating content. And it can be a little overwhelming. So here are the different kinds of content you can create. The first one is connection. So your brand story, customer testimonials. This is where you really want to get the customer to really see you as a person and get to know you. And then there's educational. So like tutorials, tips, show off your expertise. I know if I was like a burlesque dancer, I would be like always filming myself and showing it off because that's so cool. But just show it off a little, and that's, people can get a taste of what you do and what your talents are. And then there's seasonal, like holiday posts, trending topics, promotional, so showcase your services, special offers. This is great for like events. If you have events, promote your events. Entertainment, so this one can be tricky, but like humorous memes. Again, this is a great way of like humanizing you, getting people to know a little bit of your humor, why they should work with you. You can also get really good engagement with quizzes, polls. That's a really good time for engagement. And then there's collaborative, so partner with other brands, gig workers, cross promotion, support other local gig workers and businesses. I threw this picture in because I was like, oh, trending Northwest, and they're right there. So I was like, oh, that works. And that's like a great way of just reaching other audiences. It's also great, like if you're like wanting to collaborate with like a photographer or videographer, like Vexing Media, you can collaborate with them and you guys can work together. Like if they want to use like film something, show off their work, and then you can show off yours, and it's kind of a mutual beneficially. So this is what I like to do whenever I am giving advice, and for myself, for Simba also, I use a content calendar. It's really overwhelming, I feel like, when people are trying to think of content and when to post. So I usually just say, get a calendar, put a calendar in front of you. I picked May. And you just kind of want to start laying out some holidays, promotions, seasonal events. So like, let's say you have like an event coming up, you want to highlight it on the calendar. Like, I definitely want to promote this event during this time period. Also, you want to pick your posting days. I think consistency is key. You want to be consistent, just like with bookkeeping. So I usually say 3 days minimum, 2 to 3 days. And then just pick those days. It doesn't have to be super strict. These are just kind of a rough draft, like kind of a rough thing to go off of. But we like to post Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then that way I always know, okay, I need something for Friday. You know, that way you're always ready. And then you kind of want to start plugging in those different content ideas that we talked about. So plug in some connection content, some educational content, some promotion, some entertainment. You want to just kind of start plugging it in. And then you have an idea for the month of a general idea of what you want to be posting. Again, it does not have to be super strict, but this is a great time to like plan it out. And then that way you're being consistent, because when you're consistent, that is when you're going to see yourself grow on social media. Some other tips to growing on social media and building that following is, and just also just maintaining it, is to reply to context. Be sure to like and respond to all comments on your posts. So even if it's just like a little emoji, reply to all of them. Also, another way is just to scroll your feed and interact with your feed by commenting and liking. I remember I used to have an intern and he would just be on Instagram all day. And he'd be like, no, I'm fine. I'm engaging and I'm liking and I'm finding ideas. So this is a great excuse to just be on Instagram and scroll. So there's another thing, if you guys are familiar, if you're not, does everyone in here know what stories and reels are? If not, okay, cool. Last time someone did it and I was like, oh yeah, I am an internet person and I'm always on internet. So reels have higher potential to be discovered by a little bit broader Instagram community. It's also great for long form content. So like, let's say you're wanting to put like a performance or just a small like little routine up onto there. It's a great way for a long form, but you're not also doing like a whole production, like a YouTube video or anything like that. And then stories are also a really good way to keep your brand on the top of everyone's mind, to your loyal followers. So stories are great. They're the thing at the top, and you just kind of want to be up there because it keeps your name into people's mind. And it's super simple. Like, you don't have to create original content for stories. You can just share something from another person's post, or just quick little like things that you're doing, like behind the scenes, like, hey, we're here, like stuff like that. It doesn't have to be like really thought over content, just super behind the scenes, organic. Does everyone know what hashtags are? That's another thing. Use hashtags, research hashtags, make sure you're using consistent hashtags. That's a great way of just kind of keeping in people's search and just the algorithm. And then do your research. So follow and like local small businesses, specifically ones that your audience may overlap. This is a great way of just connecting with other businesses, kind of also getting inspiration and getting some ideas from them maybe. You don't have to copy or steal anything, but just like, oh, I really like that idea. I'm gonna think of doing something like that. So then so from your social media, you want to direct them back to something. And this is when it's really nice to have a website. So a website ensures constant accessibility to potential customers, establish credibility, expands the reach to a wider audience, and acts as a platform to showcase products and services. What's really nice is that there's a lot of hosting services that make it really affordable to just do it on your own. You could definitely have a professional design your website, but it's pretty pricey. But some of these, like Shopify, Squarespace, Wix, and those are really easy, and they also help you find a domain, and you can have your like hosting domain subscription through them. It's really nice. And they also have templates that you can use and you can build off of. So it's super easy to have a nice, clean, well-designed website and not paying a fortune for it anymore. Right now, we're getting our website redone. So I always say ours right now is the before, but pretty soon we'll have a really good after. So with your website, you want it to be a clean layout, intuitive navigation, which I'll talk about, branding, clear messaging to enhance your user's experience. Basically, don't make your user work to find information. I used Come Home Life Counseling because I really liked how easy it was to schedule an appointment with them. And just, you don't want to make your customer work too hard because then they're just like frustrated and they're like, I don't know where to go. Just make it super clean, super easy, super intuitive. Some website pages you want to have on there is you definitely want to have your homepage. So introduce your business or services or yourself. In your guys' case, it's usually yourself. You want to also have an about page. So share your story, experiences, values. You want to have a portfolio or service page. And this is where you want to showcase your work and list your services. If you are someone who is doing, like you have a lot of different things you do, like for your example, you do like sewing and you stuff like that, make different pages that are dedicated to those services. And then that way you're showcasing all the services. And then very important, have a contact page. So provide multiple contact options like email, phone, and then also if a lot of these websites have built-in forms, so people can leave their information and you can reach out to them. Make sure you are reaching back out to them. Make sure it's going to an email that you check regularly. I know I get frustrated sometimes when I'm reaching out to businesses and like they don't reply. And I'm like, dang it. And then I don't use them. I'm like, okay, they didn't reply. I'm going to move on to someone else. So just make sure you're using that. Also, a lot of these platforms have scheduling apps or add-ons that you can add on to that. And then it's a great way to schedule just directly on there. And then you can book out days, like you can block days that you're not taking clients or you're not doing events or you already have existing events going on. So I would just recommend doing that. If you don't want people to do scheduling, just have them fill out a form and then you schedule it with them. I keep pointing to the wrong. Did I skip one? Okay. Okay, so visuals are important. Make sure you have high quality images and videos. Like I said earlier, you can also like collaborate with people and maybe get like exchange services. Use a consistent tone that reflects your brand's personality. So again, you want to really use your voice. I know it's tempting to use AI because everything is like AI. And now I feel like everywhere I go, it wants me to use AI for everything. You can kind of tell when it's AI generated. So I just like have it come from you, have it come from your heart. That is the best way to get like your point across. And people see that, like the viewers see that, wow, this sounds like a real person and not AI. You also want to keep consistent branding. So colors, fonts, logos, and images throughout your content. This is super important. You can hire a graphic design artist, but again, you can do a lot of these things on your own and get that branding. One tool I use as a software is Canva. and it is my best friend. I love Canva. And you guys are probably familiar. All my like graphic design friends are like, ew, no, not Canva. And I'm like, I love Canva because it's super user friendly. They give you tons of options. There's a branding kit you can use, which is really nice. There is a free option and then there's a premium option. You do get a little bit more doing the premium option. But it's a great way of just keeping all of your content to like your branding together and that it's consistent. It's great. I can't recommend it enough. I should just be like a spokesperson for Canva at this point. Right? That's what I'm saying. It's great. Like today I just learned that Simba's font is Gil San and I didn't know. I was Yes. Write it off. You want to make sure you're keeping your website fresh and relevant. Keep new stuff, new events, new photos of yourself up there. You don't want like super old photos and you're like, that's not the same person. Also, you want to add on some extra features like blogs, articles, calendars, like event calendars, promotions, just to keep your visitors coming back for more. And also with like blogs and articles, it works really well with the SEO. And then encourage visitors to take action. So if that's schedule now or contact me, make sure you are having that call to action on your website, anywhere you can get it. One thing I was also going to mention is that if this was really just kind of a broad overview of website and social media, if you guys want a little bit more in depth, please contact us. Here's the way that you can get like several different ways to get to us. We also have this really handy form that has a QR code that you can fill out, scan this code and fill it out, and it takes you directly to a form. And if you're needing help with marketing or social media or anything like that, it will direct it to me, and then we can schedule one-on-one time that is completely free. We can meet multiple times. I can kind of go into a little bit more in depth of like what your specific social media and marketing needs are. Like if you want to dive into SEO, search engine optimization, I can help you with that. I can help you with digital marketing. I can help you create a content calendar. We can like sit down and kind of map out what you want to post that month. So yeah, you can visit our website. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn. And then we can meet in person or over Zoom. And then we also have we can get a translator if any of you guys ever need a translator. And then I was just going to do a little plug for Live Local INW. Robin already mentioned it, but you can scan this QR code and you can sign up your business on Live Local. It is a directory and marketplace for local and independent businesses and gig workers. And it's all over Eastern Washington, and Spokane is our main area. And yeah, it's great. It's a good way to promote your business. If you're not ready for a website, you can sell things on there. You can also have promotions like here's a one free half an hour consultation or something like that on there. And then yeah, does anyone have any questions for us? I know that was a lot to take in.
Yes.
I know buying websites varies with cost. Do you have suggestions of who to use?
I just have my own like personal ones that I've used, like my personal opinions, which is Shopify is great if you are doing e-commerce. So that is like you're selling something online, and you need that add to cart feature and shipping and all that. It's great for that. But we also Squarespace is really great as well, but it's also better if you just want to use your website as like a portfolio and just showcase your work, your contact. I usually recommend Squarespace for that. We are switching from WordPress to Squarespace. The only one I wouldn't recommend is WordPress.
Unless you can pay a developer to do it for you and maintain it.
But yeah, so I recommend those two. And then there's also other ones like just do your research. There's like Wix, and just there's a ton of ones.
I used Weebly before. It's
Yeah.
about the same price as Squarespace. It works almost the same way. So honestly, whatever custom layout you like better on the two of them. And I will say some designers locally, Maker and Made, I'll give them a plug. They're a Simba member. Their office is across the hall. They're definitely not working on a Saturday. but they can do a custom Squarespace platform for you at a very reasonable price, like very reasonable price. Then you just add your own content.
Yeah.
Now that is that the design that's separate from like purchasing URL.
Yes, a lot of these websites, these hosting websites, have a feature where you can just get your domain name, so that's your URL. Yes, and it's in there, and then you just do like a yearly subscription. I want to say I just helped someone, and it was like $12 for a year, and that's just the first year, and then it goes up after the promo and the first year. But it's super easy. Like, and then if let's say your domain's taken, it gives you like, hey, do you want to let's try and tweak it so that you can get one that's just for you.
There's a reason we don't own Simba as a domain name. And a former staffer said, because our email address is our names at SpokaneIndependent.org. And every time you spell independent, it feels like a fake word.
Yeah.
And I spell it wrong all the time because there's too many ENs in there. So our staffer's like, why don't we have Simba? And I'm like, somebody owns that. They have a lot of power and money, and we are a nonprofit. So, and also it would require me to migrate everything, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, keep your domain really simple and easy. Again, you don't want it to be too complicated for people. And then I know some people actually buy like the other domains for like little spelling errors too. I don't know if you need to do that, but I know of some people who do that.
And then it directs you to that site. If you accidentally put in Vertical Elements with an A, and you own that domain, you can just direct it to go to actual Vertical Elements. So if your audience is maybe challenging to spell, or if they think that you're Madeline McCann and not Madeline McNeil, I don't know, too much true crime in my life, you can direct them your way. Yes. I know that was a lot of information. We appreciate you being here on a Saturday morning. We will email out the slides. I can send out the bookkeeping, the BOI thing. I know some of you nodding your head, making notes about that. And then other things, reach out to us, book with us. We always use Vexy Media to record these things. They do an incredible job if you're looking for a recording. Just a plug, they're also a Simba member. We had an event in February where a fire alarm was pulled and people had to leave the room, and there was all this feedback because we had Zoom running at the same time. And the video did not seem like that at all. It was incredible. I was waiting to see what was going to transpire in that. So I know a lot of you perform and video matters. And I know that the times when we're self-recording, especially at spaces like The Guardian or Coil or Fill in the Blank event space, sometimes it's not as good as we think it is. Or we've recorded our friend or nothing. Or ghost. Sometimes ghosts show up in your videos. We really appreciate you. Please take food. The caterer made clear that everything freezes lovely. The scones, the pastries. Take whatever you like, because otherwise we're taking it somewhere or donating it here, and I'd rather donate to the attendees. And if you need help with anything, let us know. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.